Hi, welcome to this video. Today I'm going to be showing you my process for designing a spring magical girl character. This is part 3 of this little series that I'm doing. So if you want to see my processes for designing summer and winter themed characters, you can find those on my page as well. Okay, let's get into it. So going into this project, I already had a pretty clear idea of what I wanted to do. I think spring is definitely like the most cheerful season. It's all about growth and new life and stuff. All the flowers are blooming, the creatures are coming out. It's like a very vibrant time. So that's kind of the vibe that I wanted to capture with this character. So what I decided to do was make a yellow bee themed character with like a flower motif. I think that's pretty clear to see here. So yeah, the dress I think is pretty straightforward, just, with the stripes. But I did end up changing the structure of it from my initial idea. In the initial sketch I had it to be a bit more form-fitting, but I ended up going for something that's much looser, almost like a poncho, just to give it a little bit more of a youthful feeling and like allow it to kind of have this flowy, loose fit to it. She could bounce around a little bit in this dress without it restricting her movements. There's also the big bee wing cape that I gave her, plus the little hair accessories that mimic those as well. I also gave her some little antennae hair accessories, which were initially going to bloom into her weapons, but I ended up changing that, so now they're just more decorative. What I did end up adding at the end of the process were the big flowers coming out of her hair. I just felt like she needed something a bit more dramatic going on in her design. So I think this makes her silhouette a bit more interesting and, gives it a bit more motion as well. So yeah, now that blooming idea has been moved to these flowers, and I thought that they could bloom into these big flower shields and, just kind of whirl them around. I thought that could be quite fun. Okay, I guess I'll talk about the colouring now. It was definitely a bit of a struggle. It always is when I use yellow as the main colour. Because with yellow there's only so much tonal variety you can get before the colour starts to look muddy. But yeah, so having the black in the dress was very helpful for that. I also added an extra sheer layer to the dress to just make it more interesting. And the biggest struggle for me was the hair. I wanted something dark yet vibrant, but that colour doesn't really exist for yellow, at least not in the way that I was looking for. So after a bit of trial and error, what I ended up settling on was dark brown hair with bright yellow and green highlights. So yeah, I think that's about all I have to say in terms of the design process. Her name is Bee. I know, super creative. I hope you like her. I'm glad to have been able to get her to a point where she doesn't look as plain as she did at the beginning. Yeah, okay, let's move on to the illustration now. Okay, so for the illustration I wanted to use a pose where Bee was using her shields and also Bee jumping in the air in some kind of like a springy, naturey flower field environment. After a few sketches I ended up landing on a pose where she had the 2 flower shields surrounding her, so one was in front and one was behind. So then once I was happy with the character, I sketched in a background and then did some cleanup sketches, line art, flat colours on the character, just some super basic stuff. And then after I did that, I actually worked on the background and I put in a fair amount of effort and detail into it, at least by my standards. It's basically just a few flowers and then there's a tree in the back as well. I basically just used a watercolour textured brush in Procreate. I think it was called Spectra. And I used Wild Light as the smudge tool. And I basically just went in and painted a bunch of shapes and lines and, smudged them, blended them until I was happy with it. And I basically just winged it. There was not much planning going into it, especially when it comes to colours. But yeah, I actually ended up being really happy with the result. I think the rendering on the tree and also the blue flower in the front actually look really good. I usually really don't put much effort into backgrounds, so yeah, I'm actually like really proud of myself and like happy that I did this. Like, good job, me. In terms of the character, I'm not as happy with it. What I wanted to do going into this illustration was to make it a little bit more loose and textural than I usually do. That's why I used the watercolor brush to do most of my shading. And you can definitely see it, but I don't think I pushed it far enough. I think maybe if I had used the watercolor brush to do my base colors for the character as well, then maybe that effect would have been like more noticeable and at the forefront. But because I used like a regular flat brush, there's less of that that's visible. But yeah, you know, it's okay. It was a learning experience. But yeah, other than that, I'm like pretty happy with it. So then, yeah, at the end of the process, I added a couple of layers to add a bit more texture to the image and also to have like a green sheen to the image because, you know, of the green leafy background, I wanted to make sure that that was being reflected on the entire picture. And yeah, I think that's about it. Here is the finished result. Her attack is called Honey Bloom. I think that's such a cute name for a magical attack. I hope you like it. And here is B in a lineup with the other two characters that I've made for this little group so far. So yeah, that's about all that I have to say. So thank you for watching till the end. I really appreciate it. It's so nice of you. Yeah. See ya.